Hey there everybody. This is going to be another on the workbench session right here. I'm just waiting for things to start, and it looks like things have begun. I'm going to scroll down here to make sure I can see the chat and that sort of thing. And we're also going to get rid of this thing right here. Let's see if we can remove that. There we go. So tonight we've got ourselves some Boltons. This is some heavy cavalry, and I've really been itching to paint these guys, especially since they're supposed to be part of my Adepticon army. So I've got a few here that I'm going to be working on. And you can see there's a lot of detail on these guys. They're pretty darn huge. This is 50 millimeter base at least. Actually, yeah, it's at least a 50 millimeter base. So they're pretty big. And what's nice is it's all one piece. It's not fragile. It's not going to break. You can see we've got some reference pictures here. So here, let's check this out. So this is one of the references we've got. You can see we've got some interesting metals working on there right now. And we've got our other one here. So there's two different types. We're going to try and maybe negotiate between the two of these things. So I'll shrink that back down again here. And what we're going to do is, we're just trying to make sure we're got our chat visible here. And what we are going to use, I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to use some of these right here. These are the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers. And we'll even use our regular Winsor Newton oil paint. And what's nice about the oil brushers is that they come in these just indestructible containers, and you can see they got the little brush here. Makes it easy to get this stuff out on the pallet. So it makes it easy to transport them. You don't have to worry about poking a hole in them like you do maybe these tubes of paint. So that's a pretty nifty thing. Can take you over there. Here, let's see if we've got our Mig Ammo oil brushers. Here we go. Scene 4. There. They come in smaller sets too. You don't have to buy the full sets of 21, 22. I've even gotten individual ones on Amazon, especially if you're in the US. It's almost an easier way to get them. So they come in a lot of different colors. And these are, again, part of the Song of Ice and Fire. So now you got Free Folk, you have a full complement now, Lannisters, Starks, Night's Watch, all of that kind of stuff. And here's our Boltons right here. That's what we're going to be working on. Now as we go back to our first scene, here's some other things we're going to need. And this is a really important deal here with oil paints. So this is from Speedball right here. I guess Mona Lisa is the sub-brand or whatever. But it says this odorless paint thinner. This actually is. I've gotten other odorless paint thinners, as I make my invisible air quotes here, that melt your eyeballs from 20 feet away. Yes, I can put it right underneath my nose, and it's all good. I don't have to worry about getting my brain nuked by this stuff. It's also, if it's gentle on your nose, it's going to be gentle on your paint. And that's important, especially when you're trying to get something like this to be the same consistency as, well, the miniature paint that you're used to. We've got some other items here. We've got our makeup sponges. You'll see those in action pretty early. And of course, we've got our number 8 round craft brushes. And we'll grab a set of those for you. So again, not terribly expensive. 12 of these things. You can get them off the Hobby Lobby website. You can get them in their stores. It's usually easier to find them on the website. As you can see, when they start out, they have a really nice tip over there. But then when they get, say, a little older, a little more worn out, this is a nifty thing. So I've got myself a filbert brush. And when you're doing oil painting, especially, that's nice to have. It's also a multi-purpose brush because you spin that around, look at that. We actually have ourselves a nice point. It's almost like a Swiss Army brush. Better than a filbert because usually a filbert's only about that long. Now, with this, it's going to hold more paint, more pigment. It's going to be softer. You can do more blending, which is going to be really important with oils because, well, the whole idea with this is to work wet into wet. Right? So what we're going to do is start to throw a few colors out here on the palette. I'm just going to move some of these off to the side here. Don't need them all getting into our way. And I'll try and do some, again, some of the non-metallic metal for you. And we're going to try and basically negotiate between those two reference pictures. Now, who knows? I may make each guy a little bit different. What we'll do here is we're going to start off with our Winsor Newton. This is a raw umber here. And let's get this out on the palette for you here where you can see it on the palette camera. So there's your raw umber. There's a little more of that out there. And let's get some, this is Payne's Gray. It is not black. It's actually got some nice blue in it. Really enjoy that. So there we go. We got that all set. And what we'll do is, this is our white spirits in here, right? And what we're going to do is take this and thin this down. I'm going to make the palette camera bigger here so you can see that in action. So while oils start out almost like peanut butter, especially out of a tube of paint, you can see we can make these nice and watered down. Not watered down, thinned down. That's just the watercolorist in me talking. And see, we're going to go in here, get ourselves a nice little batch of this. I'm going to do the same thing over here with our Payne's Gray, and as I extend this out, I think you can start to see the bluishness to that. And that's going to be handy because, well, we're doing the armor, we're doing the metals, and we want it to be darker, so that is why we want to have this little touch of blue here. Little touch of bluish, dark bluish gray. And what we're now going to do, we're going to have our sponges handy over here. And we can shrink our camera down a bit. There we go. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to start picking some areas. See how that just flows right in there? Now, once I get this stuff on, I'll show you part of the priming process. So here, I'll just throw this on here. And you say, well, wait a second, you're wiping out all of that pre-shading that you did there. What's going on with that? Well, that's all going to come back. We'll get all of that back as I start to throw a little bit of the umber in here. A little bit of that. Now remember, you have time to work with this. And I just had to tell myself that because I've been working so much with acrylics again lately that I'm thinking that whole frenetic, oh my gosh, I've got to get in here, I got to get these colors in, got to do this fast, it's all going to dry. So wait a second, not going to dry fast. And I know a lot of people ask, so what's the drying time with oils? There's no specific answer to that. Because if you use the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers, and you also paint thinly, see how much of this mineral spirit or white spirits I added, well that's going to quicken your drying time because you've taken away some of the oil. You've basically replaced the oil with the white spirits. And when you do that, you're going to speed up your drying time. I have had the Mig Ammo Oilbrusher stuff, if I just use that, heck, I've had that stuff dry in as little as a matter of hours. It might be 4 or 5, but that's not weeks. That is, every time I use the oils or whatever, I talk to people about it and say, but they take weeks to dry. Well, yes, they do. If you're working on a canvas that's heavily, what do you want to call it, heavily, either not heavily sized, but if it's got a lot of primer on it and it's not real absorbent, well, yeah, your oil paint's going to take a while to dry because you're also painting probably really, really thick. But we're not painting that thick here. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another color into this. It's going to be burnt sienna here. And this is going to be actually really good for our fleet men here. So I'm going to throw some of that out. I also want it for the base. Now watch what happens when I thin this stuff out here. That is a nice color there. It also makes really good rust color, as you might imagine. So we got that thinned down. We're going to also get some of that in here. See how that's all just going to mix together? It's an awful, horrible mess, and people are fleeing in terror. Well, not to worry. Not to worry. It'll all be less scary. It'll be way less scary. I promise. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm just trying to trick you, and it'll still be terrifying. As we just work. See, I'm working this in so I can mix it all. Even at this early stage, I'm already starting to mix the black, the burnt sienna together. Let's get some of this jam down in here. It's all going to be dark anyway. This is the advantage of the oil. So let's throw that right over the top of there. And then, what are we going to do? We're going to take some of the umber, throw that in, let that mix. Real nice. Just let that be dark. Now we've got his cloak here. Now I've got the camera zoomed out a bit here, just because this is sort of a frenetic early pace, and I don't want to have this go off camera so easily. You can see I just really have to twist this thing around. Now I can make it bigger. Here, let's go one step bigger. The one thing you are going to have to accept when you're working with oils, especially the earlier stages, is they're going to be shiny. Your acrylic paints are shiny too, but they dry faster and they get shiny, or less shiny, much quicker than something like, say, the oils. So again, I'm going to make sure I've got my chat window here where I can see it. So see how I'm just gathering up tons of that into my brush. Again, it's the advantage of these big brushes. I can get lots of pigment in here. This guy is huge. And this thing is massive right here. Alright. I'm going to go back to my red. Some of that brown here will hit this cloak. There we go. And we're going to use the same thing here on the other side of the flail. Just making sure that everything is covered. And if you watch oil painting, as in just on canvas or whatever, you'll see a very similar type thing. You're basically priming your canvas at this point. That is actually what you are doing. Here, let's get some more of the Payne's gray. See how much darker that makes that? Lots of nice pre-shading going in there. And I know this is not the most fun thing to look at right now, but I've done, I think I've done at least 3 or 4 YouTube live sessions now with the oils, and it starts out like this. There is no other way to start out. It starts out rough. That's just how it is. It's not dainty whatsoever. Besides, these are flayed men. They're not supposed to be dainty. All right, and now we've got this whole thing all covered here. It's all covered, but we've got our sponge here, and what are we going to do? We're going to take advantage of some of that primer now. What am I doing? I'm dancing across the surface here. I'm taking some of it away. Look at how much is coming off onto our sponge. Starts to bring back some of those light and dark values, but it leaves behind some shading. Here, let's do some more here. Now, if this starts to become too stained with color, you can do this. Now, I've got plenty of sponges. See, that gives you a fresh new sponge, but now I've just created a new little angle right here. And guess what? I can use that. See, now I can get underneath the horse Look at how much more I can pull off there. Can get down here. Again, get to the front of his legs. Let's grab this other sponge here. Work our way around the same way. And now as I let this settle for a little bit, it's not going to dry. I'm going to let this settle. And I'll show you some of the basing of the rest of the unit. So I'm going to grab a fresh sponge now. Fresh sponge. So you can see how I've got red left behind. There's some blues left behind. Real nice. And this is doing a couple of things. First, it's giving us some darks straight away. It's giving us some colors straight away, but it's also something that I can play off of. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to try and cut this into a different shape. I'm going to try and cut this again. And zoom in a whole different shape here. And hopefully that, yep, see, that lets me get in here. Lets me get under the cloak here. Because you don't want too much of this stuff left behind. Again, I'm going to need a narrower sponge right here. There we are. Now, also too, if you want to write comments or questions or anything, feel free to do that. Now, the settings on this, it's basically, the preference is for quality of the picture in playback. So it means it may take a little longer for me to see your questions, messages, whatever. So if it takes a little while, don't get too frustrated. Also, I'm kind of busy on the painting side of things here, so it's hard for me to just do that and see all the questions all at the same time. So we've got that. Now let's grab our other one here. And you can see how we've got not just colors, but lights and darks. So you can see we've got this tree bark here, we've got branches, got all that nifty stuff. Well, that's what it looks like with no primer on it. So you just literally twigs, bark, rocks and gravel, the oxide paste. Now you say, okay, from there, how do you get it to this? And you see this pre-shading that's going on here. So now we can go to this scene right here, and you can see there's some more Song of Ice and Fire figures. So they start out again just raw plastic like so, but then you see I've got this kind of a reddish brown look to them. See, that's the reddish brown primer. Then I add a little bit of green. I go over the top. See, it starts to lighten it. It starts to tint it. The colors start to mix together. Then we start to lighten it. Now we've got another more sandy type color. So you can see we have red, we have some greens, we have some lighter tones, and then if I want to, I dust some white over the top of it. Now as I go back to scene one, some of the colors that you saw right here. So this is the Stynylrez primer. You can brush this stuff on too. You don't have to use an airbrush. Just faster with an airbrush. So now you see how we got to where we were. And what I'm going to do is set him aside, and let's start to work on this guy here. So again, I have to decide, do I want this shinier armor or do I want that more faded rusty tarp armor? Well, I'm going to see what I can do with the upper right hand image, which means now we got to throw some oil brushers out there because we need some of our colors in. Here we go. So let's get these boys out there. We're going to throw this Starship Filth right here. I'll move this off to the side a bit. And we're going to throw that right here. There we go. Throw that one out there. I'm going to get some blues that we can work with here. Just a basic sky blue. I use this all the time. Use it all the time on my non-metallic metal figures. And this is a little bit of a teal, light teal green here. I'm going to go with some of that. Here, let's get this out of harm's way. Throw some of this out here. You can see how that brush makes it a little bit easier to just get this stuff out on the palette in the area you want. Now we got some, kind of a yellow ochre color here as medium soil. There we go. Throw some of this out there for some lights. We got a rust color right here. That's earth clay. Let's throw that out there. I know there's sort of the obsession with making things pink, and I'm not quite sure why, but as we throw a little off-white out here, I guess the whole skin thing, right? Well, we're going to try and do something more than just pink. I'm trying to be a little more elevated than that. So just an off-white that I threw out here, the yellow bone. And here we go. Let's grab this. Let's start to think about the armor. Think about his cloak. Okay, if we want it to be more of a skin type color here. So what I'm doing, I'm taking the Starship Filth and I'm mixing that with a little bit of that rust color. And remember, we started out really thin. Why do we do that? Because that's one of the principles of oil painting. Thick paint will stick over thin paint and vice versa. Thin over thin or thick over thick tends to just, well, wipe one color out. See how nice that flows? Something else you're going to notice with oils is that you just use a lot less paint. A little bit goes a long way. So you don't need a gigantic blob of paint out there to work with. So what we're going to do, we're going to take some of that Payne's gray. That's going to give us more of a bluish dark right there. Get down under here. This is the other thing that oils do. So I'm going to just take some straight up, almost straight up Payne's gray here. See how that is mixing together? Let that mix together. We'll do some more here. I'm going to do some on cloak here. So we draw this out. And the thing is, you've got plenty of time. We can leave this sit here like this. See, look at this. See how some of that's some of our initial wash that we threw in there. I'm just using that as a mixing color right now. Let's say you don't like what you did. This is the nifty thing too about oil. You can just boom, it's all gone. You just took it away. So again, oils have, everything has what? Advantages, disadvantages, right? And I like to just emphasize what's an advantage. So here we go. We're going to do this part of the right here. All the, see, I'm just drawing that down into what that's doing. I know it's shiny. Ah, here we go. That kind of kills a little bit of the shine. Here. See what it just happened right here? All mixed together. Now the thing is, you can see how, look at that brush. See all that blue junk in there? So I can wipe some of that out of there if I want. So that's a little bit cleaner. What else does it do? It also means I can get in here and start to blend things a little bit. But each time I do that, I pick up some more paint. So I always want to have a paper towel or something along those lines, just kind of around. So here we're going to get this into the brush again. See, it's nice and spread out like a filbert brush. And that's what we're going to do here. See, I'm just going to go in there, gently brush in. Look at that. Now see what happened there? I've got a bunch of the the original Payne's gray and that other stuff, so we get some fresh paint. See how that covers? Do it again. See, it covers, but it's also blending at the same time. Let's get to this cloak here, and you can even lighten it up a little bit. So I just mixed a little bit of that yellow ochre in there to lighten it up a touch. See how that's going to just mix itself together, but again, every time I touch it, it's going to get basically dirty. Some of that previous paint, because it's wet, it's going to get stuck to it. So see, we've got some blobs right there. Here, look, there's another thing we can do. We can even go straight up. Look at that. We won't even be gentle with it. So we just tossed a bunch of color on there. Looks like very haphazard, very careless. But I've got another one of these filberts here that I can use as a blending brush. So let's orientate this where you can see it. So I just took that one stroke, 2 strokes, a 3rd stroke, and that's all. I went from just this blob here to something blended here. It went from blob to blended in just a few strokes. We'll do the same thing over here. So again, get the excess off of there. Now I can go one of 2 ways. We're going to go this way with it. So we're going to take that down this way. See, look at it, it's one stroke blends it all together. Let's do it again here. And then one more time. Take that excess paint off, because again, you don't want that just sitting on your brush. So all it took, see, just a few, you just fan that out right there. Just took a few brush strokes to do that. Did not take endless layers of paint, glazing, and all that other kind of stuff. That is the advantage. That is your advantage. Now, let's see if we can't also, I want to get a different color red in here. And I think there's a really nifty oil brusher color that's sort of it's almost like a purple type of a red. And I think that would be really fun in here. And here, we're also going to throw some of this out here because this has a little bit of a yellow to it, so it's dark mud. Throw some of that out right there. For a little bit for our base. That's good. And we've got a little lighter orange right here, this red tile. Let's throw some of that out there. Just so we have it. And once again, we're just going to look around, see if we can find our nifty red color. Or there are here, let's just show you this. This is my first set of oils right here. It's a set of 10 colors. Got it off of Amazon. It was, what was it? $25, $26 for all of them. And I'll never need any more. Here, I'll just throw a little bit of that red out there. And we're going to make our own deep, dark red. Then we got Payne's gray over here. All right, we're going to throw that down. Thin it down a little bit. Here, let's get some of that cadmium red deep in there. And now we've got ourselves a muted dark purple. And let's see how that looks on our cloak here. Yeah, that's nice. That's what I'm looking for, because we want the cloak to be a little bit different in some areas. Yeah, that's good. Like under here, that's a real good place for that color. I know this is all pretty dark and it's hard for you to see. But remember with that kind of one-touch blending sort of thing? Well, That's what makes this a lot easier to do. So I can just take that color and boom, right over the top, bam. And then just blend it. Instead of trying to figure out layers and trying to do glazes. And this cloak that goes underneath is in total shadow like that. So I'm going to throw some of that up here too, so it gets it more of a reddish tint. The nice thing about oils is you can go back and forth and make changes. Like so. Yeah, that's what I wanted. It was just looking a little too brown. But now, see how we've got this transition here? Now I can keep, again, I'm just going to go over here to see if there's any chat messages. I don't think I see any. Feel free to ask questions, whatever. We're going to go back to our blending brush here. Back to the blending brush, and we are going to take some of that and pull it down into this color here. Into the existing color over here. Just pull that down, bush it around. See, we're getting all these nifty transitions here. And I can continue to change all that. So now again, let's try and take advantage of our oil paints here. So we've got our red. Let's say we want to do some pinkish type colors. Well, let's do that. So I just throw a little bit of that off-white in there. Let's go after this part of the cloak here. Just drop some of that in there. See how that changes see how it's blending together. I'm going to drop some here. Look at that. Let's throw some of that over here too on the underside of this. I can just drop it in there and blend it. It just makes all of that so much easier. That's it's a long sweeping cloak right there. It's a whole lot easier doing it that way than trying to blend that with acrylics. I know, because I've done, well, not these guys in both, but I've certainly done enough Song of Ice and Fire figures in both of these to know that when you're working on these long cloaks and such, and the blankets on the horses, it can make your life a lot easier. Now over here, you see we've got more of that reddish tan going on, so I'm going to change it just a bit. See that? I can just make a little adjustment there, and now we're going to bring some of that in here. I'm going to bring some of that onto his clothes. See, I'm just letting all that blend with the existing wash that's there. Just going to let all that blend together. Going to do the same thing on this side. And then here, I'm going to get in some of that darker purple. And we'll just, boom, right in there. Just making it darker. Now I know some folks, they kind of say, wow, oils is all dark to light. No, and I can glaze these oils too. You'll see that later on. Now it's important that I get some of this onto the armor. So I'm just going to throw some here. Because, well, what is armor? Armor's reflective. It's going to be metal. You want some kind of reflections on it. So I'm going to let some of that leak out into here. Just brushing some on there. And now we can, again, go more into that reddish color. Here we go. See, now we make that a little bit lighter. And because there I was working against some of that original glaze, meant I had to go a little more towards the thick side. So we can continue here. We can see if I can get some of that thinned down, darker Payne's gray with the umber mixed in, darken this down. Yeah, just looking for, yeah, a little color reflection in there before we start to get in there with some of those other blues. And I see, oop, we still have one other part of the horse blanket here that needs some color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the brightness on this a little bit because we've gotten this much darker. So just pardon me while I pump your brightness a little bit there. Go back to my chat. And now back into the lighter red. That's that mix of the cadmium red deep, the off-white. Sometimes it's good to you work on an area a little while, then you leave it alone. Let's do something with the horse now. You can see I'm not even bothering to clean the brush. We want a horse that's black. Well, essentially blue and brown make black, so why not mix the two of these together? Throw maybe a touch of that starship filth in there. And there we go. And the nice thing is I can just shove that brush down in there in that impossible to reach area underneath the horse. Makes things so much easier. There. So I think we just made all that darker. We're going to put some of that dark down into the base here. Now we have to decide, do we want this horse to be a dark brown? Yeah, more towards the brown or more towards the blue? The armor, we know we want that more towards the blue, so I'm going to say that the horse, well, he's going to be almost sort of a black. We want him to be more of a dark brown. So here's our dark blue that we now throw into our armor here. Throw that right in. Gonna hit that tail. Gonna go back to some of my brown here. Make that tail darker. Mane is all covered up by armor, so don't have to worry about that. Here we are. Just get that down in there. Same thing here. Same thing here. It's more of that Payne's gray. That's our dark bluish gray. So now it starts to just everything now starting to look darker. And what we're doing is setting up some middle tones, that middle tone area, that halfway between what's light and what's dark. Yeah, let's hit some more of this. There we go. Now I think you can see, hopefully, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, that little banner up on the top there talks about the Patreon page. Well, that's a whole smorgasbord of techniques. I cover basing, object source lighting, metals, weathering, freehand, you name it. And those are basically lessons for, oh, hey, there's Bethany. Speaking of Patreon, there's one of my favorite patrons there, Bethany, hitting from Tasmania. I wonder if she's enjoying some delicious Tim Tams right now. Yeah, at least once or twice a week, I get the craving for delicious Tim Tams, one of the greatest candy bars ever. To use the oil brushers. Actually, those Abteilung colors, I've been thinking about getting those. I think maybe after Adepticon, when all that's over with, and I know we're going to be here for a while. I'm thinking of definitely trying those out. I've been curious about them for a while, and, well, you never know about anything until you try it. And I'm sure there'll be something unique about those that's really cool. So, okay, we've got this. See, we've darkened things down an awful lot. Okay, so when you have, you must have dark to show light. That's the age-old thing. I learned that, geez, when I was, what, 10, 11 years old, watching Bill Alexander long, long ago. Here, let's go into maybe some lighter color. So I thin this down a touch. I'm going to go into some areas of clothes, just a few. We're just throwing a few little. Yeah, let's change this a little bit. So you can see how the thinner paint sticks to the thicker paint. Here, I'll rotate this around so you can see that maybe a little better. So yeah, Bethany, I'm definitely going to give those a try, because yeah, the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers, the whole idea behind them is that you use them on, well, miniatures, models, whatever. They dry flat, and they dry faster. Well, and they obviously start out more like miniature paint. See, we've got ourselves a little bit of variety in there now. You don't necessarily always have to work with a large brush. We have a smaller brush here. And see, we can use that for blending too, if we're looking for something a little more targeted. Sorry, some of these cameras kind of get in the way. Sometimes I just literally have to bash this stuff into them. So see how we're going a little bit smaller here? So we'll take some of this away. Now, just the other day, I had some of my oil painted figures. They had definitely days to dry and all that kind of thing. And I hit them with the same Army Painter Anti-Shine that I use on all my acrylic figures. And they looked so much like my acrylic figures, I couldn't actually tell them apart. I actually had to go back and look at photos and stuff to see which ones were which. It made that dramatic of a change. So let's make something a little lighter here. So again, we can go almost more towards the pink side here. This is kind of a cool pink color. I'll just throw that seam right over the top there. Then we can leave it. We can go over here. And because we don't have to worry about paint drying, I can just take my time, just kind of at my leisure, mess around with some colors here. See how then we can get a nice little highlight on that edge here. I'll turn it around. This looks like that gives you a better view. Now there are times where I'm going to have to have this angled where I can see it, which means it may not be optimal for you. So I apologize for that in advance. And here we go. Let's get a little more light there. Going to take away some of that excess. See, I almost got the same little filbert thing going on with that brush. Now, let's see. Mad Stellan. Is it oil paint? Yes, it is oil paint. I'll show you in a second here. Just want to blend this here together. Alright, so let's just let that sit there for a second. Don't have to worry about it drying. So now I'm using our combination of these Mig Ammo Oilbrushers. Like so. Little brush here makes it easy to get the paint out on the palette. But I'm also using some traditional oil paints. So we've got Payne's Gray out here. Yeah, I think, and what I'll do is just something exactly like this. Remember I did it with, what, the Creature Caster paints, did the same thing there. I just took them and just started painting with them. I didn't do anything in advance. There was no preparing or whatever. I opened up the things right there on camera and just started working with them, because it doesn't do you guys any good for me to so-called test something a million times before you get to see it. I think you get way more benefit out of seeing me have to react to it right there on camera. So see, I've just Added some lights over here. Let's not get too bogged down in that area. Let's start thinking about some metals here. And we've got some nice little colors here. Let's mix that sky blue with some of our Payne's gray. Let's start to do some action here. I'm going to pick out some of these panels, and because I threw down that dark color, see, I throw that in there, and then it just starts to blend. Throw some here, let that blend. And this is nowhere near a light. So see what I've got here. Turn this around here and see I've got nothing over here. There's absolutely zippo there. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the same thing. Just going to go here, let that blend. Same thing here. Let that blend. Might even take a touch of my green there. And we're just going to differentiate some of this a little bit. And remember that notion that the thin paint will stick over the thicker paint. And you'll notice at a certain point you say, well, geez, okay, I'm going thinner. Well, now it's not sticking anymore. Believe it or not, you can reverse course and go then in the opposite direction. So then you start going thicker. And then you can reverse again. And go from thicker to thinner, thinner to thicker. You're just bouncing back and forth. There's a little bit of that greenish color there. So you're going to throw it right there. It looks massively bright there. More so because of what is next to it, which is all that dark. All that juicy dark color that we threw in there at the start. I'm even going to make that even a different color of green. We'll bring this out here as chest plate, but see, we're letting some of that red mix in. There's a few reasons why I use oils. People ask me why. Well, because I've got to paint stuff, well, like this here. So this is one of the next, this will be some stuff that I do on the Kickstarter. So here's another, it's a free folk unit there. You got 12 guys, and I've got lots of those to do. Here is another, this will be another painting tutorial here. So this is the Night's Watch Cavalry. I've got several cavalry units that I'm working on, several regular units that I'm working on. Got Lord of the Rings figures to work on. How am I going to get all that stuff done by Adepticon? Well, that's where the oils come in, because I can work on all that stuff basically at once. All at the same time. I can throw in some tanks. I can throw in some monsters. Now here's a little bit more of that greenish type color. See what? Yeah, that's good. Now you can see it. All right. Now watch what happens. I'm going to take a little bit of that away. So here, this is just our initial color that we just slapped on. Now watch what's going to happen here. I'm going to take even a little more away. It's where you can see it, and watch what's going to happen. Just got a total blend from there to there. There's a couple of brush strokes. If you're doing that with kind of the traditional acrylic type painting, well, you got yourself some work cut out for you there. That's going to take a little while. You can see with the oils, it doesn't take quite so long. In fact, it just takes a couple brush strokes. You can make changes really easily. And like I said, with the sponges, you just take your sponge and you just, for all intents and purposes, wipe it away. We're doing the same thing here. We're going to get some metal-ish type colors on there. Now, I don't want to get too crazy with the sky blue. You should have other bluish color. So there's some of my Payne's gray, right? See how bluish that is. Now watch what happens when that off-white mixes with it. Look at that. We have a lighter bluish gray. Look at that. And it's about the same mid-tone color as some of this other stuff. So let's throw this out here too. Again, if it doesn't stick, I can go thinner. I think we're going to throw some of that right here and see the difference between our other side here, and we're going to change that back to our sky blue on the other side so that we have ourselves some difference in our metals. That's always important. Now we got to get to his chest plate here, and I'm just going to start to indicate a little bit of this bluish gray there. Same thing on the flail here. And it doesn't all have to happen all at the same time. And this is the nifty thing. So we can blend. So we're just mixing that together, letting those colors blend a little bit. It's gonna be scary at first. Okay. Let's see. We got hello. I guess a shalom might be in order there, and I hope that. Let's see. It's probably what over there, maybe 17, 18 degrees Celsius, maybe at this point. I hope that this is something fun and different here. I enjoy doing the oils because it's just so different from everything else that I do. It really does. It's a challenge because it is new. And every time I use these things, there's always something new. Something new to go, oh, okay, I didn't realize that before. See, we're going to get a little bit lighter here now. A little bit lighter. We're going to try and work on. See, we'll get some of that chainmail. I have to say, everybody knows how much I love the horses and how those are sculpted. The chainmail is another great thing about the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures. It drapes better than most chainmail, that's for sure, and it's cleaner. It's so much cleaner. It doesn't look like somebody just took a pin and just poked it into some green stuff. As we just see, we're going to lighten up some of our metal right there. I'm going to go back to my sky blue color here. I know it's not always the easiest thing to see what I'm doing, especially with some of those reflections that can hit. Here, let's get some of this lighter color in here, and we're gonna. There. It seems like if I tilt it that way, oh, look at that. Look at the difference that makes. If I take away some of the excess, I can just blend that away. Blend that down here. We're going to hit some of the chains there too. Going to go back to this sky blue here. We got the top of the helmet we're going to hit. Yeah, there's Tim Tams. Let's see. Now, I know there's a million different kinds now. I think I've had the mint chocolate ones. I know there's a kind of a salted caramel or something like that. I know Kathy really likes that one. I think I've had maybe 4 or 5 different kinds of Tim Tams. I think there's just seems like there's 20 different kinds. Those are fantastic. And I have found them on Amazon. Now, well, it's the great thing, and the downside is that you generally have to get those kind of in bulk. Which, I mean, hey, that's fantastic, because who doesn't want to have about 20 boxes of Tim Tams around? But that's some pretty severe temptation, is to dive into those Tim Tams. And see what I just did here. So this is a little bit lighter above this, or below this. That's a little darker. And again, I can go in here, and it looks like, yep. Look at how much lighter that can be. It can be so much lighter. Here, we'll take some of that excess away, and we're going to do our blending trick again. White Tim Tams. That sounds pretty darn good there too. Well, I like white chocolate, so I'm assuming that's what we're getting into, some kind of white chocolateness right there. I'm going to do the same little trick on this piece of armor right here that we did on the other side. So we're going to drop this in, and then let that blend up. Let it blend up and get a little bit darker. Now we're doing stuff on the armor. Let's not forget some other things. Here, let's get a little bit of this onto our rocks here. Now the rocks are going to have a fair amount of snow on them. So what I want to do is keep this relatively on the darker side and somewhat warmer. So we're just going to throw this down. Going to let some of the initial colors blend into that. And take some of this. I'll lighten a few of our rocks. I mean, you can, I suppose, sort of do a dry brush with oils. You can. It's just a different type of material. You know, it's different material. You're using some different techniques with it. I know people ask all the time if I use water-soluble oil paints, and I say I do that all the time. That's my acrylic paints. I use oils for oils. They say, well, you can wipe the stuff on a paper towel or a piece of cardboard or parchment paper to get some of the oil out there, and it'll dry faster. Well, I don't want it necessarily to dry faster. That's the whole purpose of oils, is to enjoy the fact that it takes a while for them to dry. 'Cause that's the whole fun of this. Now we've got some of that. Let's see what we can do with our horse here. So some of that Starship filth color. Order Pop-Tarts via the internet. Oh, let's see. Amiyad says, picked up the Creature Caster paints, blown away. That is the interesting thing about those. And actually, the one thing I'm disappointed is I haven't had a chance to use them for painting in 2D again. I want to do that pretty soon. I'll probably have to wait till after Adepticon. But the darn things, I talk about a medium that does a lot of different things, as I just grab a little bit of that mud color. You can use those almost like watercolors. And speaking of oils, well, here we go. Those Creature Caster paints, they can be darn close to basically water-soluble oils, because they don't dry right away. So yeah, those are, if you're looking for something that can give you a taste of oils without having to, deal with longer drying times or mineral spirits or white spirits, that sort of thing, well, maybe you give those a try. And that could maybe be your introduction into oils. So here's a little more of that mud color. Just working that in here and there. Just working that in. Now we can go back to some of our lighter colors here. Yeah, Pop-Tart. Well, talk about something that has a lot of different flavors. Jeez. Pop-Tarts probably still making brand new flavors that I've never heard of. Here, let's get some lights on the chains there. And I realize this is really different for most folks here that are watching this. And again, this is an oil painting, a bit of oil painting demo right here, using mostly the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers, but also using some regular traditional Winsor Newton oil paints. Here, let's get that back towards some of the green. Let's hit this right here. You can see that's just a middle tone, but boy, it looks really, really, really light. But it is not. We have a long way we can go. So I'm going to take some of that off. And then we can blend it both ways. Let's take some of this. Here, let's get some back into our pinks here a little bit. Right in here. And you can see I don't linger on any one area for too long. Now I'll work on something for a while, and then I'll go somewhere else. And that does a few things. It can keep areas from getting overworked, obviously. That's a prime benefit. But also, what it can do is keep you from getting bored. You're not basically layering the same thing over and over and over again for hours. You sort of get a visual break. Now we only have chalk. Oof, let's see. I think, yeah, even at our small little neighborhood grocery store, there must be at least 15 different kinds of Pop-Tarts. I haven't had those in a long time. Geez, I may have to get some Pop-Tarts tomorrow. Now, the one thing I know they won't have, sadly, they will not have Tim Tams in there. A horrifying thought, but yes, no Tim Tams at the grocery store. As I get a little bit lighter with the pink here. Now, normally, what I try to do when I'm doing something like a live session like this, I try to have multiple figures underway so that you can say, well, here's what this looks like at this stage. And I wanted to do that, but there was just way too many other things going on today. I must have based about 50 figures today, movement trays, so that's where a lot of the time went. I wanted to point out something here. See how this is already less shiny? This first stuff that we did? It's already not as shiny. That's the other reason why I like to move around the figure, because as I work on it, lay down the fresh paint, it's shiny. Then when the paint is not as fresh, it loses some of that shine, and then I can see what's happening a little bit easier. And it's the same thing, just letting some of this paint blend together. So even this is a little less shiny than it was when I first put that down. So here, let's see if we can't reflect a little bit of that. And see how I just did that right there? Trying to reflect a little bit of this color that I just threw on there. Now, we're going to try and get ourselves a little contrast with this chain here. And then what I do is I let those set for a little bit. You can, believe it or not, because I didn't think it was possible, but you can glaze over wet oil paint. I know, because I do it all the time. As in all the time. Which is pretty nifty to be able to do that. So I'm just going to get some lighter colors on the edges here of the armor. Just because we got the top of the flail here. Go to the helmet, and see, there's a little difference here. Again, the reference is different. This could be leather instead of steel, but heck, I'll just try and make that metal too. So we're just gonna get a little bit of light color here on some of this. Yeah, I know there's a lot of reflections there. I'm gonna thin this down. We're gonna go with some of our sky blue again. Because why not? It's facing towards the sky. There, I think now you can see it a little better. I have some of this on that chest piece there. And the shields, well, neither. And let's get some of our greenish color again. Get some of that onto the shield here. Like so. And if I ever sense that, well, the paint is too thin, I can always make it thicker. And when you make it thicker, then it's going to stick, like it's going to there, like it's going to there. Yeah, we've got this little bit of an edge trim there. And now we've got these pieces here. You gotta hit these, so we're gonna go start up here. It takes away some of the excess, and then I'm just gonna blend that with the color that's already there. Because what the heck, that's why we put that stuff there, is so we could do just something like that. And I can get rid of some of that extra. So I think I've got, on the Patreon page, I've got demonstrations of an entire unit. Actually, that was the Winter Soviets that I did for Bolt Action in oils. I've got actually some Morgul Knights that I'm working on right now. That's Army Painter Series 7. That's underway right now. And that's that Army Painter pledge that you keep seeing that scrolls by every so often. That pledge level right there, it's $15 a month, but that will get you at least, 18 to 20 hours of videos every month, because every army painting series, that's 12 hours, between 11 and 13 hours, usually 12 and a half, something like that. Because it takes you through the entire process. It takes you through basing. It takes you through the color test figure, which essentially this is kind of a color test figure here. So the rest of these will be painted up for the Patreon page. I'm just doing this one here because I just kind of, well, I was hoping to get some company. Oh, hey James, how's it going? There are so many good points available now, but hard to get, or paints. Yeah, that's the thing. I guess it's, well, let's see, I think Secret Weapon might be a little bit easier to get. Apparently some of the Reaper paints are hard to find, like the, what is it, the Reaper liners and the clear paints that I really love so much. Those can be harder to get. For me, actually, it was the oil brushers. They're not hard to get. They take a while to get here. That's why I started doing the Amazon thing. They're roughly the same price as they are on the website. But the nifty thing is they'll be here in 2 days. So that's, people are wondering why I would get them off of Amazon. It's really not a price difference. It's a time difference. Which is that can be a big deal, especially when I need them for a convention. I'm not going to do too much underneath there. Not too much, And now look at this. This paint over here almost looks dry. And I get the entire black backlog. Well, let's see. Well, here's the other thing too, is I do actually now this, not going to have a hard copy of it, but actually all of the videos that are done, that are recorded, edited, that sort of thing, they're all done in high resolution. So actually you can get those on USB drives. And that's basically every single Army Painter series that I've done. That is now, you want the Lannister Halberdiers, you want whatever. That is all now a hard copy on USB. That's, see, it's being recorded and all that, but it's obviously we're having a conversation here, and some folks, when they're watching the video, they don't want the conversation. They just want to listen to it. So that's fine. And that's why I've got those hard copy recorded videos. One thing I've done with the YouTube videos that I watch is that I've made myself little playlists. So I've got terrain videos, not just terrain videos in one place, but terrain videos that cover snow, or terrain videos that cover flock and how to make your own static grass. So I basically, it can be confusing sometimes because that's a whole different part of my YouTube experience, is learning other things. Actually, and the reason I do those is because whatever I learned from there, I want to turn it around and then apply it to the Patreon videos. And I'm doing the same thing here. See, taking this little yellow ochre here, letting it mix what's in the brush, and then just gently brushing some of that onto the tail. And then we'll get another brush here that we can use for some blending. Just blend that in. Actually, the other thing, I think now it might work. I tried doing it initially, but basically YouTube said, well, you've got to develop your YouTube channel more to be able to do this. Is I want to start doing some YouTube Live for just the patrons. So that would be just for you guys. And that was, I went to do that initially, and it said, nope, you got to get YouTube approved. That's what it was. And that's the other reason why I do stuff like this. These YouTube Lives that are public access, because, well, it makes YouTube happy. Because YouTube wants you to have a certain amount of views and watch time every single month. And the only way to really assure that is to make sure that I have some of these public access ones. As I lighten this up a little bit, so I'm going to get rid of some of that. And I can do my blending trick there. Can you see how rough, see how rough that is there? What are we going to do? We're going to peck away at that, and we're going to smooth that all away. And let's grab some of this purple in here. And let's get some on the armor down here. There. I think you can get free shipping on orders of 300. Okay. Oh, hey there, Jericho. How's it going? Yeah, I don't know what the delay is. It could be anywhere between 7 to 10 seconds. Because again, I have the latency optimized for playback. I tested it the first couple of times, and sure enough, the playback was definitely almost like you were watching just a regular video. So here, let's get some of this orange in here. Change this around. Almost like it's a little bit of rust there. Let's throw some of this into the mix here on some of the armor here. Now I can do it in glaze form too. But for right now, yeah, it's just basically with the junk that's in the brush mixed with some of the Mig Ammo orange. Do that here too. Now let's say I want to do that little bit of a glaze. Here we go. So I'm making this almost looks like water, right? Let's get this where you can see it. Now oil paint has a different capacity, or a different, there we go, capillary action. See what that just did? See, I touched it twice, and it just sunk itself into that area. That is the difference between, look at that, see, just 2 dots. Look what that just did. And you notice how I just left it? I did not go back in there and tap, tap, tap. Wait, see, 1 dot and leave it. And do some of that here. See, just a couple dots, leave it. Just a dot and leave it. Then do some of that here. It's the same thing. See how that's starting to pick out some of the spikes? Just leave it go. Do some of the same here. Maybe some right there. So all of a sudden now it doesn't look quite so shiny. Let's drop some of this right here. How was about this? Bang, right there. Let's do a little more here. And I guess the irony in all this is that oil brushers are primarily used by model folks for weathering. See, look at how that just drew itself right down. See, I'm going to touch that there. So right there, it is possible to glaze over wet oil paints. It can be done. Just did it. That's why I wasn't getting too involved in details early on here, because I knew that I wanted to do something along those lines. I'm going to do some of that on the shield here. So just a couple of dots, let it go. Letting that just accumulate there. So with glazing oils, it either goes into a wash or start lifting paints. It was definitely not something I tried right away. I just figured, well, I can't do that. Now, you also, let's say, it either just never really works as well as you want or doesn't click or whatever. You don't have to do it. You could just say, you know what, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let the paint dry, and then I'll just do this over the top once it's dry. Especially if it is the oil brushes, it won't take as long to dry. There is something I was going to test, what was it, a food dehydrator? Because someone suggested that was a more natural way. So if you wanted to dry something, maybe you give that a shot. I have one here. A friend lent one to me, and I'll give that a try at some point, because that could be interesting if it worked. I'm certainly not going to put a blow dryer to it or something like that. That's an invitation for cracking the oil. But see right there? See how that just, boom, went down in there. Now the key is where I did that, there was really thick paint there. So I guess in my head, as I threw some more of that in there. In my head, I'm saying, okay, I've got this pretty thick right here. I can get away with one of these glazes. Or it's something that's had a while to dry. Now if this was just my own thing, obviously I'd be working on all 4 of these at the same time, and I probably wouldn't have gotten into this just yet. See, I can start to blend that around a little bit. I wouldn't have gotten into this part of the weathering stuff just yet. But obviously you don't necessarily have an infinite amount of time to watch this right now. Obviously, you can always go back and watch them. That's why I try to emphasize the playback quality there. So it's got a little more of our reds here. A little more. Bang, right here. Yeah, just touch there. And it is possible also to glaze darks in. And I know that is, think of all the stuff with the oil paints. And you're thinking about what's the toughest part of it to really master, get down. It's the glazing wet oils on top of wet oils. And I can see right over here, I need to get some pink in this area because it did not get there. So I'll do some of that. We're going to go back here and grab some of that cadmium red medium mix. Wow, look at that. That's the initial glaze that I did there. It's not dry or anything, but it certainly was not looking shiny at all. Yeah, so I can see how this is already getting less shiny there. So I'm going to make this a little bigger here, see what we've got. So see, we've got, yeah, you can see there's some rust in there. You can see, though, that instead of a lot of, like my Lannisters and stuff, you can see there's just a few lighter tones on the armor. So I'm going to do is move some of this stuff back. I'm going to make sure that I've got that in focus for you. And let's see if we can't start to find ourselves against some more light colors on the armor. This is definitely a more of a drier approach right here. Definitely a drier approach. And here, put some here. And just slowly starting to work out areas with a little more detail. Yeah, not really a dry brush at all, because that is very wet oil paint. And we're just going to drag this, feather that over the surface, and just leave it. That's the other big challenge with the oils, is knowing when to touch that and then when to just leave it. Now, this is the other fun advantage. Now, this brush is basically destroyed. It's an old Winsor Newton Series 7, essentially useless for any kind of water-based paints. But the oil basically acts like a shampoo / conditioner. And all of a sudden, it's this fantastic brush that I can use for doing little stuff again. So it's like it restored the brush, which is pretty amazing. So it lets me do little stuff like that. So if you have beat up old sable brushes or something like that, and you think of just there's no life left in them, well, the oils, turns out, are really good for them. There's, I think, 3 of these brushes that I was all set to basically just throw away, thought they were useless, and they gained a complete new lease on life. Look at this. See, I'm going to do a little dot right there. That's right over, it's right next to where I did that glaze of wet oils on top of wet oil paint. And fortunately, this is still nowhere near white, so we can actually still lighten this up more from where we're at. We still have a ways we can go. Now let's get back into our blue here. And here. So I tried, again, this is sort of pushing the pace a little bit here, faster to this more detailed stuff than I would normally do. And I thought it would be more beneficial if you could see some of that process too. Because me, I don't mind all of the down and dirty, gritty stuff. But lots of folks, they want to see some of the prettier stuff happen. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is some of the more fun, more obvious stuff, instead of all that grunt work, all the setup stuff. So I just dropped that little light there. We're going to do the same thing on this piece of armor here. Right there on his leg. You can just draw that right there. We've got the stirrup here. So even with this little brush here, I can still blend those oils. Yeah, let's grab a few of these little edge lights here. Oh, sorry, I covered up my chat with my camera focus controls. So see, we can push this stuff around even with this tiny little brush. That is what's fun about oils. Here, let's see if we can't grab a few of these. Remember how when we first started this, oh geez, what was that? Hour and 15 minutes ago, what that looked like. It was just a mess. We were just slapping paint all over the place. And then eventually it starts to take on. You start to see the colors start to form. You say, oh, that's what we're looking for. I'm just gonna drop some lighter colors on the top edge there. Do the same thing here on this chain. But all of this is set up by all that dingy, grungy work that we did at the very start of this. And that's where the patience comes in. You have to know that eventually you're going to get to the more dramatic stuff. And it's eventually going to look exactly the way, well, hopefully exactly the way you saw it in your mind's eye before you started. See, we're just going to take a few of these, some of our metals there, not doing every single one. I also have to think, so okay, what part's in shadow because of the cloak over the top of it there? I'm going to add another one of those lights here. And all the while, I have to remember that, yeah, I can, if I need to, I can glaze over the top of this. And what's the, oh, I know too, some people say, okay, well, what happens if the paint dries? You get taken away for enough time to where even your oil paint is now dry. What's wild is that actually wet oil paint over dry oil paint is really easy to get some massively smooth blends. That was one of those huge surprises that I did not expect. It actually is really nifty because you can basically use another brush and almost use it like you're buffing something. Almost like you're taking some kind of a for like wood or whatever, and you're just kind of gently buffing that in, and it works really surprisingly well. I have to say I was really shocked by that. You can go again, thin it down. I'm going to try and catch some of the light onto that. And now I'm going to start to bring out some of these things. Some of that edge trim there. And all the while just getting a sense, a feel for it. It's like, okay, I've got to thin this down. Now I've got to, oh, okay, now I've got to go thicker. And here I had to go lighter, and I'm just going to let that blend with what's already there. Now let's get some of this, pop some of this green in here, so that the colors just don't get too boring. That's the thing with metal, you have to reflect stuff that's around it. You have to think about the sky. Here, I'm going to do some of that here. Oh, I guess you can see that. Just dropping some of that in. And then we can take some of that, put that right here. Ah, there, I think you can see that a little better now. And we're going to do the same thing. Here, we're going to get some of that lighter. Throw a little bit of a edge light there. Let's bring back a few lights here, like these rivets. Just like that. Got the spikes there. So we've played around with the armor for a while. Let's not forget about our robes and other such things. We got our little brush again. I'm gonna make sure that, okay. Sometimes I have to scroll the chat to make sure that it's still there. Alright. See what I just did there? I just brought in some of these, and what you've got is basically a cooler pink going into a warmer, more of a, almost a yellowish type color out here. Yeah, I can let, even with this little tiny brush, can blend that stuff. So you've got this whole different array of colors that's going on. And every so often, like I said, you just tear yourself away from a given area. You say, all right, you know what? I'm going to have to give this, let this kind of set here. Get my mind focused on another area. So again, this is a way to get what seems like a pink color into your flayed men, but with a little more variety than that. So see that one right there? That's just almost kind of a straight up red there. Let's get some yellow ochre out here. So again, this is the oil brusher. I'll throw some of that right over here. Use some of this now. Maybe some areas of the boots here. And the idea is just to have a little different color flavor here. Maybe that's some kind of crazy mud on their boots. But what it also does is it makes it different from all of those reddish colors around it. And we can do the same thing if we want to blend that in. So I can just take that and it's blending that right into my much darker colors there. I can do that on the other side here. Again, grab some of that yellow ochre. Here we go. Again, put some highlights on the boots here. There we are. Do that. Take our smaller blending brush and do the same little trick there. We got these reins. Let's see what happens when we take some of the umber and the ochre, mix them together, see what we get. Like so. And use that for our reins, lighten those up a touch. Here we go, that'll do it. Because going lighter is not, you don't always have to go lighter, sometimes you just have to go more saturated or warmer or cooler, because there's so many different types of contrast. There's just so many different kinds. And I have a little example that I like to use. And I'll get to that in just a second here. Just throwing some yellow onto the shield that I want to blend in here. Again, using my blend brush. Take some of that away, clean it. Move that around. Let's see, we've got a whole different color there in our metals. And here, let's grab this guy right here. This is one of the Mountains Men. So you can see there's pinks, purples, all kinds of different things there. Well, let's do something like this. Poof, we just made it black and white. You can still see all of the lights and darks. Those are still there. But when we bring our color intensity back, so we didn't lose any of our shading, but we had this differences in the pinks and the purples and the teals and everything else. That's that sort of hidden level of contrast that a lot of people just, well, it's not really at the forefront of their mind. They don't think about it necessarily. But that's what I'm trying to help people understand and access. I'm going to go back to, yeah, there we go. Going to get the chat back up here. I'm going to get some of this bluish green color into this part of the metal again. Here, let's, there. So again, this is something I try to do. I try to do one of these a week. It's sometimes weeks get pretty crazy, and I want to do it something on that particular day, but sometimes, well, we all, life things or whatever things get in the way and make that not really possible. Here, so I'm trying to get a little bit of a under shading, so I'm going to take that brownish color there, just trying to get underneath this there. That's what I'm looking for. Just hard to get that position there. Now we can do a little, take some of this and put it on the horse too. This is that ochre and some of that mud color. Just looking to get some of that right here. Now, one of the things I was hoping to do with the Patreon page was to be able to get the funds to have a larger filming station, because right here everything is super, super, super tight quarters. And there's 8 different lights and 2 cameras and everything else. Oh, it's just right on top of each other, which is okay when I'm doing smaller, more basic 28mm figures. But bigger stuff like this, where it's kind of pointing in all directions, well, that is much, much more difficult, really tough. I'm going to try and get me a light right here. See that? I can just, even with oils, I can still get that sharp of a line. It's all, again, it's all wet paint. None of it is dried. Oh, crazy. Yeah, and then we can look at this. See, I almost wonder where I got soap. I'm painting smooth and smooth blends. Boy, it's been something that I've tried to, I guess, modify people's outlook on that a little bit. I know I've tried to do some of the paint contest judging, but boy, it's really hard to get people off of that notion of it has to be totally airbrush smooth. Maybe it's my 2D art background, but there were some painters that I grew up idolizing, and then even at the academy when I was going to art school, they would do stuff that looked photorealistic, and then you would walk up to it, and you don't have to be a foot away. You could be 3 to 5 feet away, and you couldn't just see every single brushstroke. It just looked like a mess. But it looked like cloth. It looked like lace. It looked like metal. It looked completely photorealistic until you looked at it and you saw it's not photorealistic whatsoever. It is an actual painting. Somehow that's just gotten lost. I don't know if it's because in the contest world it's easiest to just say, okay, I can't really compare this diorama to this other thing, so whoever did the smoothest brushstrokes win. And I know that can happen because it is not necessarily easy to compare such different things, and sometimes that default mechanism is just, well, is it blended smooth? And unfortunately, the other thing too that happened in that quest to get the smooth blends, what gets left out is all of those different forms of contrast, like that one thing I just showed you. Because it's really easy to make a smooth blend when it's white into off-white. So you also start to have less shading, less contrast, because it's just that much easier to make it all smooth. Of course, the oils also, and you can see right there, I just blended something. There's no blending here whatsoever on this piece, on this side over here. There is now. Just took a couple of brush strokes to do that. So that's what I'm thinking. If people want smooth blends, brush strokes, whatever, gone away, well, oils is certainly a good way to be able to not have brush strokes showing. So that's why I'm surprised. Well, it's a new and different thing, and people, they sort of find something that works for them, and then they just stick with that forever. Well, usually not forever, because they start to get bored with it. And I can guarantee you that if you can find the neatest technique everywhere, or anywhere, whatever, but if you just keep doing that same thing over and over and over again, yeah, it's a security blanket, but eventually you will get bored. It will happen. And once that happens, well, what then? It's going to be hard to to get that desire back. And I know it's an uncomfortable prospect that you spend all this time to develop something only to become kind of bored with it. But now for me, there's the necessity of having to come up with techniques all the time because, well, I have to paint a lot of different stuff. And some of it I have no idea what the heck it even is. So I have to come up with things on the fly to make that work. Now you guys probably won't run into quite the same thing. But who knows, you try a new army project or whatever and you say, geez, I need some other different way of going about this. Now we've been adding some more lights in here and there. Here, let's see if we can't find a few places where we can find a few blends here. Like so. See, speaking of which, I just toned that down. Just did the same thing here. Same thing over there. Just going through, smoothing some things out. Let's do that over here. Take some of that dirty stuff off of there. Sometimes you just see maybe a little too much paint on there. Then we're going to do that on the legs here. Now that paint had a little while to sit there. And by a little while, I mean 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Maybe a half hour. You'll find that it's really interesting to here do some of on this leg here. We're going to do the same thing. That just had a chance to sit there for a while. The armor here on the chest had a chance to sit there for a while. Some of the colors here on the shoulder things there. And let's get some of that lighter color back out here, because this is where you can see that, boy, there's just a big difference now when something that almost is white hits it. Right here, we're just... So remember, that looked so light, it's not so light anymore. And then I can even blend that in a little bit too. Here, let's do... Again, I got our light here. We can get a little bit of a edge light there, and then carry that down into here. So see, we've got our little blend work in there. Look at how much different that is with our little edge light there. Same thing on this side. And sometimes they'll see that I have to thin that down to make it work. If it doesn't want to flow, sometimes you just got to thin it down. Now, one of the other thing I'm going to try and experiment with too eventually is stuff like liquid. That has some different properties to it, and that's something I really want to test out myself and see what that's all about, because I didn't use it even when I was doing 2D oil painting. I never really used liquid at all. So that's something I just want to make sure that it does what I think it's supposed to do. I guess that's the thing I'm looking for, the answer, the whatever. And if I don't make any sense, that's because it is now almost 4:15 in the morning here, and it's been a long, long day, and a very long day. And as soon as I hit these things with this lighter color, this is basically almost an off-white at this point. Really changes around what we've got going here. The same thing here on some of the spikes. And like I said, you can let it dry completely if you wanted to. Heck, again, you can do a lot of, you can work with oils many ways, even on the same miniature. I'm trying not to throw down a whole set of rules here. You gotta do this and you gotta do that. There may be certain things where I say, look, this is physically how the paint works. So you might want to just consider this and do this. But I try to keep that to a minimum. You can see I'm just gonna keep moving around here. Not gonna get stuck in one spot. And you can see as I go along here, things just get a little more targeted. Yeah, this is another good place for one of those edge lights there. Down here is going to be another one. Right there. Turn it over here, do something similar there. I'm trying to get closer to that picture we have up on the upper right hand corner there. There we go. Now one thing, and this is something, we don't have pets anymore, but if you have pets, and that means you've got dog and cat hair floating around, I would suggest while your oil paint is drying, I'd say cover it up somewhere. Have it out of the floating zone of all that hair and dust and stuff that they generate, because it'll stick to the wet oil paint. See, I can go in just like I did before, and then take away the dirty paint, go in here, and then just blend some of that in together. But you always have to take away that paint that's dirtier. Do it again. I'm going to do it right here, right above that, right there. So it's more than just a smooth blend. It's also giving you a nice color mixture. Instead of having to glaze all that in and do a lot of hard work, it's just an easier way to get that same type of finish. You just don't have to work quite so hard. And here we go, same thing. Now I'm going to say I want some darker tones in here. We've been adding a lot of light. Now let's go back the other way here with some darker stuff. So this is that Payne's gray again. Thin that down. And now we start to bring back some of our dark. Yeah, we can bring back some healthy dark tones here. Like here on the other side of the shield there. And I always have one of these little blending brushes here that I can use. And let's see, we want this to be a little darker in here too. So I can blend that in, make it a little darker. Here we're going to do the same thing. Again, got my little blending brush here. I can take this, blend that together. There we go. So now we've got some yellows on that shield, definitely getting some different colors in there. And we'll get some darks even on these little studs or whatever the heck those things are. So we've got almost more of a glaze right here. Yeah, that's very, very thin down. And then we can go a little bit thicker. What we're going to do is get a little more definition along our chains here. And you can see there's times where I will touch something multiple times, and then there's other times where I just touch it once and then leave it. Once and leave it. Here, let's do a little bit of a glaze here again into the darks on the leg here. So see, there's not a lot of back and forth with it. It's just one shot and done. Not doing a lot. There, just do it and leave it. I guess that's the other thing. It can be take a while to get used to that balance of being more forceful with the brushstroke, more purposeful, I guess, instead of just sort of kind of flailing around, just putting colors wherever, or just feeling your way through it. Sometimes you say, well, look at that stuff. I actually had to use some white spirits to reactivate it. I want to get back in here at this armor here. Just a touch. Here, let's get some of the green. Right there. Doesn't take a lot sometimes. And we're going to drop a few lights right here because we got the darks in there now. So see, sometimes we work it darker and then immediately work it back lighter again. We're just trying to set up some additional contrast in there. And let me see here. I've got to actually go back to some of my ochre colors here. And I'm going to say I want that maybe be more of a leather type color. Yeah, see, it's easy to just switch that. Didn't take much. Here, let's get some more of our yellow ochre color. Boom. That's all it took. That's all it takes sometimes. Here, let's get a little more ochre. I'm going to just say he's got a He's wearing a glove there instead of that being his bare hand. Now let's get a little lighter version of that in there. There we go. I know sometimes, again, it's hard for you to see. And just ask you to be patient with that, because I obviously need to be able to see it too. And just trying to work multiple colors around here to make sure it doesn't get too visually stunted. So now we got that lighter color, and we can bring out a few links in our chain. Can do a few highlights along where the flail is there. So we're going to thin that down. Thin it down. Go back over to the other side, do a similar thing over here. Find some links in that chain. Not every single one. Not every single one. Get ourselves a little bit of an edge light there. I'll just leave that go for now, and let's see if we can do a few more darker glazes. We're going to go back to our umber color over here. And again, wet glaze of oils over oils. And we're going to do that right here in this section. Capillary action. Gotta remember the capillary action. So this is thinned down a lot of those white spirits, right? But we just touch it there and leave it. Gotta just leave it. If I go in there and push it around, it's just gonna turn to mud. So there we go. Just touch that, leave it. Gonna do some of that here too. I'm just gonna let that flow on its own. Can't go back in there and mess around with it. So we're going to do some of that here. Just going to try and find some darker tones. Here on the shield, same thing. And again, you don't like what's there. We're going to do the same, so we'll blend this in. Just like I'll get rid of some of the excess there. Now we've got our blend right back, no problem. Do the same thing here. And let's get the top edges, some of these things a little bit brighter here. There we are. And I'm going to also probably slam a darker glaze onto some of these parts too. And just taking advantage of the lighter color. Let's mix some of that with our pink, because we've got a long ways to go yet with our pink to get lighter lights. And I can still then, I can go back the other way and do some darker glazes too. We can get this edge right here. It's definitely, I'm just getting the sense that that's why this is supposed to be skins or whatever, because it's really, it's kind of tattered. It's got these, well, basically chips and divots in it, for lack of a better term. Little tears. well, I guess as bits of flesh might do. So I'll get a few lights here. And then go back to and try and do some of that darker glazing again. So I've even got some of the Payne's gray mixing into that umber there. Here, let's get it even more liquid to flow. And what I'm trying to do is right here at this juncture there, and then leave it. Here, I'm going to get some more of that. And then I'm going to take some, actually just some white spirits there. And then I'm just going to pull this along here. And just let that go. Now, let's see if there's any other places we can do that. Now, we did a darker glaze right here on this part of the shield. Yeah, now you can see that. Darker glaze on the shield. There it is. Gonna go back to my ochre color over here. Some of the mud. Gonna make some few touches of lighter color there, just to get some separation. And the cloak here, I see I could probably even use some darks in there. So what can we do? We're going to take some of this umber here. I might even throw, oh, here, there's the Payne's gray. I'll throw in a little red there. So let's make ourselves a nice dark red glaze out of it. Let's see if we can get that down into the crevices here. And again, it's going to take some patience here, so I'm just going to drop that in there and let it be. And I'll just let that sit in there. Now we've got a little cut right there, so we're going to let that glaze sit in there. We've got some other areas over here that just need it, like right here in this section. Needs a bit of a darker glaze. Gonna hit it and leave it. Here, the same. I'm gonna do the same thing. Just let that work its way down, and then just leave it, because that was, the metals had nothing against it as far as a contrast, so we had to just get those darker. And we're doing the same thing along here. So you can make these adjustments along the way. You say, oh man, that's just not, I got too much lights in there, I need more darks. You can still add those darks in. You can always, you can always go back in and make it lighter. That's no problem. Certainly do that. And I'm just trying to get some darks here, so I'm going to clean this off. We want to do another one of our little blending tricks here. So I can blend that all together. Now it just looks a little more rational. Let's get some darker colors on the horse's face here. That's just, I don't want to keep making those straps lighter. I want to make the face darker. Boom, there we go. So now you got some contrast back. That certainly needs to have some darks in it. Even some of that chainmail does. I can see there's another area in here that just lost its way with some darks. Boom, right there. So I just do one shot and then get some fresh color in there. Do it again, and then leave it, and just let the capillary action do the work for you. So I'm going to do another one here, and then just leave it. Yeah, get some, just needed some nice dark in there. Again, if you want to have light, you must have dark, and vice versa. So see what that just made this edge stand out more just by default. Here we got some of that dark reddish brown again. And I'll throw some here. Now we got fingers there, and I'm just going to darken those down. So again, when you look at the areas that are older, as far as a few hours ago, you can just see that those are just less shiny. We can always have a fresh one of these. See how fresh that is. We can use that to do a little bit of blending here. Because that paint's had a little while to sit there. See, we can see how it picked up some of that paint. So we wipe some of that away. Gonna do that over here. So this is the thing, when your paint sits around for an hour, 2 hours, it's more like you're buffing it than blending it. Yeah, see, we're just going to do the same thing right here. Go in there and just gently buff that into a better blend. Can do that here along bits of the coke. Here, let's turn that where you can see it. There, that's better. And this doesn't have to be the only blending brush that you got. You can see that I used some of the smaller brushes to do a similar thing in a more tight area. But this whole thing, what have we been doing this? Roughly, I would say 2 hours maybe, because we spent a lot of time talking about materials and that sort of thing. So about 2 hours ago, we had this. That's what we had. And now we got metals, we got shields, we got some weathering, we got a lot of different tones here. We got cool pinks and warm pinks and all kinds of pinks. Now we're going to get some slightly lighter pinks over here. And I'm just trying to get the edge of his cloak like that. Once again, I can take one of these brushes and buff that in like so. Now I can see we've got some more here. Let's do that warmer color again. Wow, see? That's the Mig Ammo Oilbrusher. I actually had to activate that with some white spirits. It actually was, I want to say it was starting to dry, but it was get a little tacky. So maybe this will be a little more of that warm flesh color coming in, which we're going to then reflect over here on our metal. Let's get some of that on his sleeve over here. And over here, now that we restored those darks in there, let's get a little bit of that on the weapon there. And let's get some of that in here. There, like so. I'm going to get some of that onto here because it was starting to look a little uniform there. We don't want it to be too uniform. Let's get a little white on there to lighten that up. Trying to get this out of from underneath that flail. yeah, a little there. That's some of the skin color. Get right in there. Now I need something in here to break that up a little bit. Let's see what our green can do here. That's that seafoam green color. So I'll just do a little bit there. And I've got this, the fluffy brush right here. Good, you can see that. See what we can, yeah, that blends that together real nice. That was nice. Okay. And now that I've got the darks restored here, have you tried the oil brushers, metallics? I did actually, oh geez, what was the one? Well, I'm sure, it was on the Russians. I tried it there. And I actually have, I think you've seen me use the Vallejo metal medium in acrylics. Well, here I can show you one. So this is silver. I think they make about 6 or so. Now I tried metallic oils in the tube like this, and those just didn't work. The metal flakes were way too, they were huge. There was like little metal boulders in there or something. So that was no good. That wasn't gonna work. But the Mig Ammo stuff, the particles are very fine, and I was able to mix them up and do the true metallic stuff. And I'm gonna do that with some of the Song of Ice and Fire figures also. I'm going to try and do a little true metallics for you. Here, we're going to drop just a touch of light in there. And almost in the same way we were doing the darker washes, I'm just going to let that integrate. Here, let's go back to that purplish gray. Like that. And we'll just going to blend that in right here on this shoulder pad, shoulder armor. Don't want to wipe out the weathering that we did, the oxidization. But yeah, that is something probably, well, let's see, I'll probably do it on the Starks, and maybe I'll do it on the Free Folk also. Kind of maybe makes sense. Maybe I'll do, well, I've already done a couple of the Free Folk Giants in acrylics. Then I just prepped a couple more. And the idea was I would do those also in oils. So here we're gonna go back and grab some of our grayish color there. You can see our shield has a whole bunch of different stuff going on with that. Now there's a gold. Well, this is like a burnish, or is it? Yeah, gunmetal. So you'll be seeing these, and actually, let's see. I also have, yeah, here I got this unit here. You can try using this. So I think I'll do the metallics on this too. That's was that the great axes or something like that? Yeah. So I think we'll try it on we'll try it on the Free Folk too. I think there's a copper. I could be wrong. Yeah, let's mix some of this green and that together, because we've got an awful lot of pink colors here. Yep, that's what it needs. So we're just going to change again the slight little change in flavor right here. There and there. So I'm going to wipe all that stuff away. And then we'll blend it like that. Now let's a little more of that green. You know, I like to put greens in my reds and reds in my greens. I know it sounds crazy. And I think the medals, the Mig Ammo medals come in, well, you probably get them in those sets of 3. Alright, let's see if we can't get some of that over here. See, this, it just has no reflectivity over there, so we're going to change that around. Here, let's lighten that up a touch. Then we're going to try and get an edge light here. Boom, like that. Now we're going to get some lighter brown colors here. We got to do the undersides of these guys here. And we can even drop some lighter colors right there. And once we've done that, you've got our brush here to try and blend some of that. There we go. And it's amazing how there's parts of this, even after only an hour or even as little as 15-20 minutes, like I said, it's not like they look dry or are dry, but they're less shiny. And those are the type of colors that you can really go back in and glaze on top of and not have to worry about weird things happening. So let's see what we can do right there. Trying to do some more interesting stuff on this helmet here. Make it a little less boring. We're going to get to our sky blue again. We haven't messed with that in a while. Put some here. And then, what do we got there? Here's some of our Payne's gray. We can maybe even do try another little dark wash here. So we're making that again a liquid. And we'll just try and darken some areas there. Yeah, see if we can be very controlled with it. Here, let's get some more darks in some of these places. Like that. The other side of the chest plate here, underneath there, needs some dark. We also need some dark right in here. And it's not going to be a smooth thing. There, now you can see it. I need to reach out to Mig. I know Ammo is about to publish some figure painting books. Yeah, I know. I just sent Jamie. He's with Mig Ammo too. I sent him some photos I took with I think you remember the Night's Watch live session that I did. Was it last week or a week and a half ago or so? I sent him pictures of those because they have obviously the model crowd as far as 1/35 scale, 1/48. Heck, I've made 1/48 models myself now, use them for bolt action. And actually I've got a whole bunch of 1/48 scale planes. And that's obviously what they originally intended them for. But like you say, this is a whole new realm for them, is using them on miniatures. Oh, what's the other thing too? Big Child Creatives. This is exciting. Just had some hangouts with them, and there are Big Child Creatives 75mm figures on the way. And guess why? They sent them here because they want to see those done in oils. So that'll be fun. 'Cause I've got I'm basically kind of running out of the Nocturna figures. There's just not enough of them, at least in the 75 millimeter scale. So Big Child, they were definitely wanting to see their stuff done in oils. So that'll be the next fun new thing. And those are already on their way here. So I think there should be some plenty of fun things with oils yet. Like I said, I want to do the oils in the true metallic metals, right? That's what the TMM actually stands for. As we drop a little bit more lights there. I've done it a few times in acrylics. I think the first ones I really tried it on were the Gates of Antares figures. Those are old Facebook Live sessions that I did. Oh yeah, I also used them on some busts too. And this is another one of those. This is going to be another thing I'm doing for the patrons here soon, is another one of these. So this is from Blackheart Models. So this was done in the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers too. See all those nifty, see how we got the greens and the yellows and everything in there? It's the same idea, what we're doing here, just the same exact thing. So we're going to drop ourselves a little bit of a light there. We're going to get some light in here too, just in that one area, and then leave it. On the bridle there, or no, that's actually just holding on the horse's armor. So let's find ourselves a few little lights here along on this seam, these folds here. Some there. And let's see if we can't get ourselves a little bit of... Yeah, we've got everything here is just kind of... There's too much flatness there. We're going to try and get a little more color into that. Here, let's see what happens if we throw a little bit of this purplish red there. So hopefully that's on screen. Because we're going to try and add some right here. Right in there. That's it. And I might even, for the heck of it, try to lighten that up a touch. Yeah, that's what it needed. Everything was just really emphasizing dark an awful lot, but not a lot of reflection of all the reds and everything and flesh colors around it. Here, let's turn the you can see it. See, look at that. Yeah, I hope you can see that little bit of red gets in right in there. See what I just did? Right on this section here. See how it's reflecting that little bit of red? Because it's pointed that way. It ought to reflect some of that. See if we can't find something similar here on this right there. And then leave it. We need to do that here too. I'm going to put that right there because it's just there's so much of the blue. We need something that's a little different. So now I think you'll see we haven't changed the lightness of it. It's still the same light color. But what we've done is it's the same level of lightness as the blue, but we've basically made it more of a reddish type color. Because we're trying to reflect some of the environment now. We can think about those things. See, we're doing that here. Around those, just enough. See, we'll even let it mix in with the blue there. And that's what's going to give us more of a metal look. Let's see if we can reflect some of that, his cape, back down onto the... Yeah, that's what I needed. See that right there? See that pink? So it's looking like it's reflecting. Let's get some of this now. Can you see it there? Maybe you can see it there. See that? So I just did there, and we're going to do the same thing right next to it. Yeah, I don't know which ones exactly they're sending. I would guess probably some of the pirates, but there was one that I really enjoyed. It was the basically sort of like a monkey samurai type thing, and hopefully that's one of the ones that shows up, because I think that'll be a lot of fun. I'm gonna get some of that. If I still have it somewhere here, I'm going to grab some of that lighter white color there. Here. Is that the bone? Yellow bone? Yeah, I'll throw this right here. Looks like it's on the palette. Let's see what else. Now they also... Oh, and one of the reasons why it was interesting getting in touch with them, because a whole bunch of the Song of Ice and Fire stuff that I love so much, probably one of the reasons why I love the horses, guess who did a whole bunch of the sculpting, and it pretty much is now them sculpting it. That's Big Child Creatives. So when you have that Craster figure where the cloth just folds on him so well, and the horses look like horses instead of dogs cosplaying horses, it's because Big Child was taking care of a lot of that sculpting. Here we go. There. Just trying to... Now I can start to get more and more focused on smaller things, because we did all of the big stuff. We've set all of this stuff up in motion now. Here, let's go after a few of these little chain links. And not every single one, not always lightened up the same. And like I say with every one of these videos, it's all up to you. How much refinement do you want to put into it? What's the amount of time you have to spend? Right? We always talk about that currency of time. How much time? Okay, if I spend 3 hours on each guy in this unit, that's 12 hours. Because 3 hours on each one, to me, that's no big deal, because again, this is what I do. But then you have to start this, well, that's okay, that's... Now you're talking 12 hours for that one unit. Granted, it's a very pricey unit. It's what is it, 9-10 points. It's one of the most expensive point units in the game. But you still got the rest of the army to do, because they are going to buddy up with... Here, let's grab this. They're going to buddy up with my Knights of Casterly Rock here. So this is going to be another set of demos. You can see it's going to really focus on freehand, but also some non-metallic metals too. Here, let's get back in here with our... Catch a few of these edges. So I need to do this edge right here. I'm going to get rid of some of the excess. I'm looking to do this one right here. Like that. And that top edge there. And you can see the difference that made now. Well, let's go in the other direction here with some darks right in here. Yeah, because again, we've added a lot of lights. Now we need to add in some darks. And it's perfectly fine to be working both ways. You go more towards the light, then more towards the dark. Here, let's reinforce a few edges here. Like that. So this is something here that's not terribly smooth. We can blend that out a little bit. This is also going to need just something to make it a little more lively here. That's better. And then let's reflect that onto here. And that's the thing I've noticed now. If you, oh gosh, what was it was the last Dark Sword thing. So again, that's for the patrons, the ones that played the Army Painter and Dark Sword levels. I did a non-metallic metal video, and the references showed it was actual people wearing armor, and it was amazing how much the armor reflected itself. And like the armor was bouncing off the armor like it was a bunch of mirrors all set up next to each other. Now, of course, that's your shinier armor. So I'm just going to drop a few little highlights down in there and then stop. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Back into my sky blue. Mix it with the lighter color here. Back to that sky blue. Just trying to find a little light edge. Oh, there we go. Right in there. And then we'll just blend that out like we do. Now let's, I think that's a little bit flatter. What am I going to do? I'm going to throw some of this blue in here. Just like there's, I don't know, there's some kind of a tree line or there's something there that's being reflected. Doing that here. So it's a constant now thing of adding in refinements here and there. And now the flail here, if I want to do blood effects on that, which I may do, well, that's obviously something where I'll wait for the paint to dry, then go back in and do my blood effects. Here we need a lighter edge on this piece right here, on the shield. And then we're going to drop some of that right there. Go in, grab a blending brush, and do the same thing we've done before. Need to do that right there. So you can see how we get these little transitions like that. Right here, we're going to blend that out. Oh, I think we can do that here too. Now I need to get some of that same reddish flesh tone color in there. Let's gray it down a tiny bit with that green. And let's get ourselves something down here. And let's see if we can't reflect. Yeah, there we go. See, I had that blue right next to it. Now you can see it. So I got that just a little more, a touch to the red. We're going to do that here too. Work that in. We got some edges here we're going to do. So it's just constantly looking around going, oh yeah, I need to actually reflect this instead. Which we'll do here. Same thing, see right along in here and not necessarily, yeah, that's good. We'll do some down here. So hopefully you could see what I was doing right there. And a similar thing here. And let's go. Let's go pink or go home. Let's get some pink over here. And we're going to blend that into like that. Yep, because we can. Soften that up a little bit. And see, we got dark to light, back to light again, or light to dark, back to light again. Sorry, it's now 5:04 a.m. in the morning here, so that's why the brain might be starting to shut down just a wee bit. I do want to say thanks to Bethany, Aviad. I appreciate it, and sorry if I mispronounced that, but I appreciate having the company, that's for sure. I know this is kind of a weird time for folks here in the U.S. Here, that's better. I think you can see that now. I'm just going to try and get that. That's what I needed. I needed that to be sort of blended together a little bit. And the same thing there on that shoulder pad. And even here, so again, we've let the paint settle down for a bit because we added some color on there, and now we can go back and blend that. We're going to do that over here, right here on this piece. Ever so gently, just do that, and just leave it then. That's pretty much going to be your biggest challenge, is just leaving things. Leaving well enough alone, I guess is the expression. That won't always be easy for you. Just leave it go. Whatever that song is. Just going to find myself a few bright highlights there on the horse's face armor there. On the bridle. Let's get ourselves some lighter colors working in there. Gonna try and pick out a few things like the couple of the rings here and the chainmail. Just a few. And right here is over the eyes. Like I said, you can throw as much refinement into this as you want. You want to spend 15 hours on each one of these guys. Well, that's fine. Now, of course, again, unit of 4. That time's going to stack up real quick. Now, it's not to say you don't paint some of the unit. You know, you paint it a certain amount, and then you use it for games, and then you go back and you paint some more. That's all okay too. I know I've had to do that with armies before. Yeah, let's see if we can't find ourselves a decent highlight along here. Again, so I put that in, set that down. We've got a brush here that we can blend that with, like so. See, I still have some of that rust that was added. That's still showing up pretty nice. And we've got our nice variety on the skin. So this is more of a yellowish brown. It's a bit of a cooler pink there. We've dirtied things up. So you have the so-called pink tones that you wanted there, but also with just that touch of variety, so it's not all just the same thing. And here, let's go back and see if we can't get some lights here on the underside of this, because this is something we did in the very beginning. Yeah, there we go. So now that's just got a little touch of light there. Remember how messy that was in the beginning? We just slapping whatever there. Now it can be a little more targeted. And all the while, just trying to get, okay, I want to get more of a cooler highlight over here. I want this to be a warmer highlight over here. So that's how you can keep the same color, have a visual interest, and keep your painting interest alive. Because you'll be surprised at how quick it is. I've seen it happen. I've seen people just overnight just get insanely bored with a project. And then they don't want to touch it anymore. They're just sick of it. And they don't paint it. And then they kind of get that guiltiness of not painting the figures. That they're that much less inclined to want to paint or even do the stuff anymore. That's never a good thing. They certainly don't want that. So again, just as I see something, I say, you know what, I need to do that same thing over here. Or if I add something in one place, well, I better do it somewhere else, so we don't lose that cohesiveness. Yeah, let's grab right here, get a few of these chain links with some lighter colors on them. And even the spikes here. Here, let's get underneath this one here. Can you see that? I think so. So just doing a little bit of a reflected light underneath there. I think all of these have that. And then we'll do a brighter one on top. And the reason that looks a little more subdued is because we're letting the color underneath blend in. So let's do that same thing on the top of these. Like so. Here. So again, if you want to see more of this, way more in depth, all the different techniques. That is why I've got that Patreon scroll going there. And that Army Painter pledge level, that'll basically get you access to everything. And usual typical tutorials are usually a couple hours long. Anywhere between 100 minutes to 140 minutes maybe. Those are the real long ones. And I tend to do things in episodes. So things like army painting starts with basing. Well, technically it starts with basing and ends with basing. Especially if it's got snow on it. And that'll get you plenty of... Oh, nailed it. Oh, actually. Wow. I'm glad I pronounced that right, because I worry about that. Oh my goodness. Because I know my name is usually difficult for people to kind of quite figure out how it's supposed to be pronounced. I've heard it pronounced many, many ways. Oh, we need this to be darker here. It's got no dark whatsoever. Now it does. Oh, we got something over here, a little notch, and that needs to be darker. And what do we got here? I think some of those little pieces of chainmail, those also need to get a touch of light here and there. Just a bit. And yeah, the horse's helmet thing here, that definitely needs... Yeah, that needs to be lighter, so does that. And then we'll go the opposite way. We'll get some of this darker stuff in there. Right on. See that? Just gonna let the capillary action do the trick for me. It's funny, after I've been oil painting for a while, I try to do the capillary action trick with acrylics, and well, they're just not the same. I guess that's why oil floats on top of water, because oil is thinner than water, whatever. But definitely, yeah, you can kind of get into the habit of how oils work, and then you realize you've got to shift now back to acrylics and what that does well and less well. So let's get back to our darker color here. Alright, so I just want to say thanks again to everybody that watched. It is... Man, geez, we're almost 3 hours into this, so I am definitely going to try and get me some sleep here. Well, that gives you a pretty decent idea of how to approach something like the Bolton Flayed Man in oils. Again, starting from this, just our basic primer here, all the way to this. So thanks again for watching, and I will catch you on the next episode on the Workbench.